Okay, so if you look closely at the numbers, the contracts, and the history of the United States, a genuinely chilling pattern starts to emerge. In this explainer, we're going to map out an entire economic system. We're talking about a massive machine, carefully constructed over decades to ensure that conflict isn't just some geopolitical strategy. No, it is a highly profitable, practically inescapable business model. To see this machine in action, honestly, you just have to look at the Oval Office. From Barack Obama all the way to Donald Trump, presidents constantly campaign on the exact same promises, right? To end the endless wars, to bring the troops home, and to focus on domestic growth. But the machine almost always overrides the man. Eventually, the headlines always read something like, the U.S. officially launched a preemptive strike, or we see sudden troop surges, or massive bombing campaigns. It literally doesn't matter who sits behind a resolute desk, the bombs just keep dropping. Which leads us to the ultimate trillion-dollar question. Why can't America stop going to war? I mean, is it really just an increasingly dangerous world out there? Or is there a hidden architecture, like a system that actually requires constant conflict just to function at all? Well, to answer that, we have to look back at the original blueprint, because finding a pretext to escalate and seize territory, that's not some modern glitch. That is the original American expansion formula. Think about it. In 1776, it was just this narrow strip of 13 colonies on the coast. But through continuous conflict, the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, right up to the 1846 war with Mexico, the map absolutely exploded. President James K. Polk literally sent troops into disputed territory, just waited for a clash to happen, and then used it to claim over 1 million square kilometers of land. By 1898, they were looking out to the sea with the Spanish-American War. Military force was, for sure, the ultimate tool for growth. But here's the thing, back then they still actually downsized the army when the shooting stopped. But then we hit 1945. And everything changed. For the very first time in its entire history, the United States did not demobilize after a major war. Driven by the Cold War threat of the Soviet Union, the U.S. decided to maintain a massive standing army, build hundreds of global military bases, and construct a peacetime weapons industry that operated around the clock. They essentially built an industry that, by definition, absolutely requires the constant threat of conflict to survive. Fast forward with me to 1993. The Soviet Union has collapsed, and suddenly the defense budget is shrinking fast. So this famous, highly consequential dinner is held at the Pentagon. Defense industry CEOs are brought in and given a very blunt ultimatum: merge or go bankrupt. What followed was an absolute feeding frenzy. In less than a decade, 51 major contractors basically swallowed each other up until only 5 giants remained. The Big Five: Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman. This created an untouchable monopoly that now handles over 50% of all Pentagon contracts. And as we all know, with no competition, prices definitely don't go down, they only go up. But the real secret sauce of this machine is exactly how these giants get paid. It's this massive, structural loophole called the cost-plus model. Here's how it works. The government pays for whatever expenses the contractor incurs, plus a guaranteed fixed profit margin on top of it. Just think about the psychology here for a second. If a project's costs run over, the contractor loses absolutely nothing. The taxpayer simply absorbs the blow. There is literally zero financial incentive for these corporations to save money, streamline their production, or come in under budget. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The more wildly expensive a project gets, the better it is for the contractor's revenue. Which brings us to staggering figures like this. $2 trillion. That is the estimated life cycle cost of the F-35 fighter jet program alone. It was originally pitched at $240 billion, but thanks to that cost-plus model, it just ballooned into the trillions. And this isn't a one-off. It happens constantly. Take the VH-71 presidential helicopter program. It surged from $6 billion to $13 billion before the government finally canceled it completely. And the real kicker? Even though the helicopter was scrapped, the contractor was fully paid out for all their bloated expenses anyway. And you'd think someone would be keeping track, right? Well, nobody's watching the register. In 2023, government auditors tried to track down $3.8 trillion in Pentagon assets. They could not verify 63% of it. Just let that sink in for a second. Since 2018, the Department of Defense remains the only federal agency in the entire U.S. government to never pass a financial audit. It is quite literally a bottomless financial black hole pouring trillions of taxpayer dollars directly into the pockets of the Big Five. Let's look at this purely through the lens of an investor. Say you had put $10,000 into the S&P 500 on September 10th, 2001. Today, you'd have a very respectable $75,000. But if you had put that exact same $10,000 into Lockheed Martin stock with your dividends reinvested, you would be sitting on $250,000 right now. While your typical tech companies succeed by serving customers and optimizing prices, the defense industry succeeds when global tensions rise. Make absolutely no mistake, from a financial perspective, war is a spectacularly profitable investment. But here's the thing, weapons are only half of the machine. The other half? Oil. Back in 1974, U.S. Treasury Secretary William Simon flew on a highly classified mission to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. This deal was so secret it was hidden from the public for 41 years. The Saudis agreed to pump their massive oil revenues back into U.S. Treasury bonds, and in exchange, the U.S. guaranteed them military protection and VIP access to advanced American weapons. This secret handshake permanently fused the global oil market with the U.S. defense industry. And this birthed what we call the petrodollar loop. It is an inescapable, beautifully engineered cycle. Gulf countries sell oil and they collect billions in US dollars. Then they use those same dollars to buy American weapons. Now, piling highly advanced weapons into the Middle East inevitably causes regional tensions to spike. And what happens when tensions spike? Global oil prices shoot up, which means more revenue to buy. Yep, even more weapons. Oil goes up, weapons go up. Oil goes down, weapons go down. It is a practically flawless 4-decade cycle of engineered instability. So at this point, you might be wondering, if this system is so obviously bloated, flawed, and transparent, how on earth does it survive democratic oversight? How does it protect these trillion-dollar budgets? Well, the machine has essentially built 3 brilliant defensive shields to make itself virtually immune to any real reform: political lobbying and campaign donations, weaponized job creation, and the notorious revolving door between the military and the private sector. That job creation layer, it's genuinely brilliant. Take that bloated $2 trillion F-35 program we talked about. Lockheed Martin didn't just build the jet in one efficient, centralized factory. Oh no, they strategically shattered the supply chain, scattering it across all 50 U.S. states, officially tying it to 275,000 jobs. This means that if a politician tries to cut the wasteful F-35 budget, they are simultaneously voting to kill thousands of jobs in their own home district, which is basically political suicide. So regardless of what party they belong to, everyone just votes to keep the money flowing. And then there is the revolving door. Just look at Lloyd Austin. Here's a guy who serves as a military general for 40 years, he retires in 2016, and immediately walks right onto the board of defense contractor Raytheon, pocketing a cool $2.7 million. Then, in 2020, he is nominated as Secretary of Defense. Now, even though federal law actually requires a 7-year wait for this exact scenario, the Senate just hands him a waiver. And suddenly, the former Raytheon board member is running the entire Pentagon, right as Raytheon happens to receive over $30 billion in government contracts. Oftentimes, the buyers and the sellers are the exact same people. This system is so deeply entrenched into the foundation of the government that even presidents who campaigned aggressively against it end up serving it. Barack Obama entered office on this massive anti-war platform, promising sweeping change, but the machine simply adapted to him. To reduce political blowback and troop casualties, Obama shifted heavily to drone warfare. The machine just got leaner. His administration ultimately authorized 563 drone strikes, which is 10 times more than his predecessor, and in 2016 alone, dropped over 26,000 bombs. He tried to dismantle the machine, but ultimately he left it running quieter and deadlier than ever before. And recently, the machine has completely stopped hiding its true nature. In September 2025, President Trump signed an executive order returning the Department of Defense to its original historical name, the Department of War. Keep in mind, from 1789 to 1947, it actually was always called the Department of War. And this isn't just a symbolic rebrand. It is a terrifyingly accurate reflection of reality. The guiding principle of this massive industrial and financial apparatus isn't defense. It never really was. It's offense. So we've mapped out the expansionist history, the cost-plus loopholes, the missing trillions, the petrodollar loop, and the revolving doors that shield the whole shebang. It is an absolutely flawlessly designed business model where peace is genuinely terrible for the quarterly earnings report, and global instability is the ultimate bull market. Which leaves us with one profound and frankly terrifying question. As long as this entire system is fundamentally built to profit from the offense, will the machine ever truly stop?